For me, the original Voltron was before my time. Wasn't even born yet when it came out, and I'm not even familiar with the anime it was based off of. But for me, that never mattered too much, because unlike with Macross, which some people would refer to as Robotech, and I will always say, you're wrong. For me, the series Beast King Go Lion is not one of interest. I mean, let's be real. Outside of the combining robots, it just never quite got attention as far as I'm aware of in Japan. If you know something to the contrary, please feel free to let me know. As far as I'm aware, Voltron just really came out on top when it was Voltron. As honestly as simple as that. I mean, I even had a couple of the lion toys. I believe I had the black and green lion, despite the fact that I really wanted the blue lion, just because I like the color blue. It was as simple as that. But most kids who grew up in the 80s and 90s was aware of Voltron to some degree. You couldn't not be. Pop culture referenced it at every single turn. But attempts to make it a selling point for a newer generation didn't really work out too much. You had Voltron into the third dimension or something like that, nobody really ever talked about. I didn't even know it was a thing until I actually started looking up Voltron stuff. But what did kind of become a little bit of a interest for people was Voltron Force, because that came out on Nicktoons during a time when Nicktoons was trying to push series like the Speed Racer kind of revival and stuff like that. Nicktoons was just on this kick where they would just try to pump out content basically, and that's kind of how you got Voltron Force, which was treated kind of like a follow-up to the original series. Funny enough, it was a series that from time to time I did want to actually watch. I just never was able to pick it up from the beginning like I wanted to. But the real meat and potatoes of this discussion is, of course, Voltron Legendary Defender, which I have to say, I loved. I remember watching it from day one because of the fact that it had a lot of the same guts as Avatar The Last Airbender. So I was definitely willing to give it a chance as soon as I heard about it. Because after Legend of Korra ended, I was ready for more. But I always knew that it wasn't going to have the same kind of writing forethought that Avatar had. More so Legend of Korra than Avatar The Last Airbender. This was a shot in the dark to see if they could make a cool and fun series that would attract a variety of people. And it ended up doing far more than just that. People became enthralled by the series and its developments and the directions that it went, specifically from the first, second, and third season. It had a fun start, great animation, and some really entertaining character. But unlike a lot of people, I could tell from the beginning that it was always going to have one very crucial problem, and that's that it never seemed to know where exactly it wanted to go. Some story elements felt like they were planned, while others felt like they just came out of nowhere. Sometimes the plot would kind of meander in such a way that you just weren't quite sure where they were going with certain elements. So it was hard to tell if I should be taking this series seriously and be looking at it from the lens of fun, of, hey, galactic battles, really intense storylines, civilizations at war and stuff like that, or I should be looking at it from the lens of fun romps through space. And I always will feel that the problem is that the series was trying to do both. It was trying to be both. And while from a certain standpoint, there was nothing really wrong with that, it worked for the series up to a point. But I feel like the series made kind of a wrong turn the moment it started trying to take itself serious, started trying to add in more extreme consequences to certain situations, making certain characters a little bit more complex than they kind of needed to, which is a weird statement to say because you would think that complexity would be what someone who loves a great storyline would want. It just always felt like you could feel that they were just tacking some of this stuff on towards the end. Like certain plot points were made almost at a whim on certain situations. Like certain characters, you would be like, oh, okay, this character was supposed to die, but they chose not to. But then it sometimes made me wonder, okay, did they bring this character back because of fans? Did they actually plan to bring this character back? Does it feel off because it's just they didn't manage to write it in a convincing manner? Or was it actually not planned out and it's showing? That was always my question towards the series. But I still enjoyed it. That's the thing. There were still core elements of the series that I always enjoyed. Right up until the end, as controversial as the last couple of seasons, that last 26 episodes really got. Because there was a big LGBTQ plus following for the series, but the series in a lot of ways, it never really leaned in that direction in certain terms of certain elements. And the one direction time they did kind of lean there and try to make it more apparent that those elements did exist in that universe, it felt kind of ham-fisted in, which might just be a product of, certain higher powers not making it be an easy transition for them. And that sucks because I feel like this series needed a deeper sense of planning. This could have had a lot of its mistakes forgiven in certain other areas if different areas were tightened up a little bit. And I think that's why I'm kind of critical on this series, is because, I don't tend to be the person who's just like one to harp on the shortcomings of a particular form of media. I tend to just mostly enjoy it. For the most part, I'll make a little jab here and there, but I enjoy things on a whole more often than not, more so than most other people. But Legendary Defender seemed to lean into where the fans thought it was going after the fact. Like, they were the last ones to catch on to what a lot of the fans thought they were leading into, and in an effort not to let down the fans, they tried to adjust course, but it just wasn't quite working. They weren't able to do it with enough finesse that it could please enough people without a lot of the backlash. I mean, hell, a lot of people I've heard online say that the She-Ra finale was rushed, and I'm just over here like, I was actually kind of okay with the She-Ra finale. Like, even if it was rushed, I'm over here like, I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good. I was just like, okay, day is saved. We did all the things that were pretty much highlighted very early on, and some stuff that kind of almost came out of nowhere, but at the same time, it's just like, I mean, yeah, you might as well just do that and try to wrap that up in order to just kind of bring things to a solid conclusion. And when it came to Legendary Defender, I guess I will always feel like, and I hate being the one who says this because I've heard other people say it and they sound like assholes, but this series needed to be tightened up. Certain elements dropped. If we were going to get the finale that we got, there should have been at least more development towards a lot of that stuff at the bare minimum halfway through this entire series. I'm talking by the end of season 4, beginning of season 5, a lot of the stuff that we saw towards the end of the series, it should have felt like we were going in that direction. But there were character relationships that feel like they were just kind of forced towards the end just to give certain characters something. Certain characters' own personal journeys seem to just go in a completely other different direction. Some characters who deserved a little bit more relevance never quite got enough relevance. Certain directions that they took certain characters, it felt like the creators were just like, okay, and that's the end of this character. Oh wait, people like that character? Let's bring them back later on and try to do something with it. And it just ended up not being an enjoyable experience with that character. And if it sounds like I'm kind of all over the place with this whole conversation, this discussion, that's the way I felt towards the end of this series. Like, my feelings were jumbled up and just all over the place. Like, I want to like this finale more than I did, but some of the choices just never sat right with me. And without giving too much away, I'll say it outright, the path that Shira went on always seemed like it was the writers being very wishy-washy with what they were doing there. The things they did with Princess Allura, felt like it was on a solid path for a good long time, only towards the end of the series to just start going, okay, I don't know if I'm okay with any of that. And by the end, I definitely wasn't quite okay with that. Keith felt like he was on a very solid path up until a certain point, which I'm glad he got to that certain point, but then it was just like, no, now you're doing this other thing? That feels weird. Lance had a lot of developments that felt pretty cool, pretty awesome. And towards the end, a lot of notable aspects of his story kind of got pushed to the sideline for something else that I'm just like, okay, really? Is that what we're going with? And just, made me feel some kind of way towards the end. Pidge had a whole storyline that, was very thought out up into a certain point and had a lot of great avenues. Like, a lot of the things that happened with Pidge and their family was actually kind of awesome. And they felt kind of a bit like a more realized character by the end of things. Although I might say that their relevance kind of dropped off a little bit towards the end, but I didn't really have an issue with that because it's just like, well, this character had plenty of episodes to kind of establish their storyline. And Hunk does tend to get the short end of the stick in most Voltron series. Like, I enjoyed Hunk, but I really do feel like so much more could have been done with Hunk. Karan was a blessing in a lot of areas, but deserved at least a little bit more. Emperor Zarkon, Witch Haggard, Prince Lotor, their storylines were the biggest feeling that the writers were just not quite sure what they wanted to do, or they just were kind of flying by the seat of their pants because the ups and downs were left, rights that these characters took, it was too much. It was just too much. And maybe this is a series that I need to go back and look at in hindsight to just binge it. See if maybe things were a little bit more apparent going forward, but there's always just been this overwhelming feeling ever since I finished the series that the real shame of all of this will always be, I wish they had planned better and, stuck to those plans. Not saying they couldn't be a little bit flexible in a lot of areas, no, never. But there were some directions that I feel like they just should have stuck with. They had a decent tone going that they seemed to want to make darker, but the last couple of seasons that felt just wholesale unnecessary to me. Certain characters were given prominence. Well, let me stop. The series as a whole was good. There was a lot of love put into it. The series was better than it had any right to be. It tried its hardest, and for the most part, it just managed to do what a lot of series never really get. It got to the end. If nothing else, the thing running through my mind is the question of, what will the next Voltron series be like? Will it find itself as much of a hit as Legendary Defender or even the original? Nobody could have guessed that a series like this would have done so well, but it did. So it just goes to show, you never know where the next big thing might come from. So if you have an idea that might actually end up resonating with people, roll with it. It might just be something legendary. Till next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din. If you like this video, do all the YouTube stuff, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.